Welcome into a Friday afternoon edition of Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton. Except today it is Mic'd Up with Fulton and Kyle. Jake LeBon has the day off. He is getting his 4th of July weekend starting a little bit early, so it'll be just me and occasionally my good man Kyle Manthe hopping in and joining you on this Friday afternoon. This will also be the same arrangement coming up on Monday afternoon as well. Jake LeBon will be back with us after the 4th of July holiday coming up on the 5th of July next week. This is a Victory Friday edition of the show. The Royals yesterday, who we had a 20-minute show as they took on the Cleveland Guardians in an afternoon matchup at Kauffman Stadium on a hot day at Kauffman Stadium. The Royals get the walk-off victory. Freddie Fermin with a 2-run double to get that victory for the Kansas City Royals. Artie Fermin's second walk-off hit this season. He also had that suicide squeeze bunt way back in like April or May. The time is a construct at this point, and I don't know what any of it means. But all I can guarantee you is Freddie Fermin does now have 2 walk-off hits this season. We are going to talk about the Royals today on today's show. It's going to be a lot of Royals talk, but before anyone gets a little scared that we're talking a lot about a baseball team that's not even won 25 games yet, it's about a bunch of different parts of this team. More importantly, I'm going to break down a lot deeper, because we have more time today, John Sherman's comments to the media yesterday. We're going to look at both his comments on the team and how actually I'm okay with a theory he has put out on spending for this team. We're going to break that down coming up at the bottom of the 1 o'clock hour. And the top of the 2 o'clock hour, we're talking stadium, because John Sherman was asked a lot about the stadium yesterday, and he actually gave some interesting insight, or at least was more forthcoming about that stadium situation that's become such a contentious hotbed in so many parts of the community over there in Jackson County, a little bit in Clay County, in Kansas City, and just across this area as well. So we are going to hear some thoughts from John Sherman and take some looks at what he's thinking about as well. Today's Royals game, they start a series with the Los Angeles Dodgers, and normally that means you shouldn't want to watch the game at all. But there's a Royals rookie making his debut tonight against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Jordan Lyles is sick. He will not pitch tonight. Hallelujah. For real, though, hope Jordan Lyles is okay, and it's just a small stomach bug. But Alec Marsh, the number 14 prospect for the Kansas City Royals, will make his major league debut tonight against the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Royals have not made an official announcement on what the move is, what shuffling of the roster will be done so that Marsh can pitch tonight. He is already on the 40-man roster, so no one has to be DFA'd to make this move. Someone just needs to go down to the minor leagues at minimum. We'll probably see some sort of shuffling there, and we'll see. In all honesty, and please don't get mad about this, you might see Austin Cox sent down to AAA. The reason being, he just pitched. You're not going to use him for a little bit. Maybe you can also do some different things. I don't know if that'll be the move, but that's something I could anticipate. But we are going to talk about Alec Marsh and the fact that he is going to be making his big league debut today. We're going to look at donor fatigue in the NIL market. Everyone kept talking about these NIL collectives. Well, are these people going to keep giving money? Is there always going to be all these donors giving hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars to these collectives? What'll happen? Well, Jake and I have theorized at some point that's going to slow down, because these donors are going to want to see ROI, return on investment, and that's already starting to happen. We're going to look at some donor fatigue in the NIL market. And then Vahe Gregorian of the Kansas City Star, fantastic overall sports columnist for the Kansas City Star, is going to join me at the bottom of this hour. We're going to chat with Vahe. Vahe and I are going to talk a lot about the stadium. He was there yesterday at that media availability with John Sherman. We're going to break down the stadium situation. What is it like in Jackson County? What is he hearing from people in Jackson County? And just overall, what is that situation like between the Royals and the city, and how this process is going to continue to go on? As always, you can join in on the show on our text line, 785-272-9429. It is wide open today, especially with me running a bulk of this show today. You are always welcome to give me your thoughts on the text line. You can also hop in the comment section of our YouTube live stream. Go to youtube.com. Sports on 580 is that YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't. We would appreciate it. You can hop into the live comment section as well. But where we begin, my friends, the Royals avoided a sweep. with a win that, I'll be honest, I didn't see coming. The Royals were down 2-0 for a majority of their game to the Cleveland Guardians yesterday afternoon. Zach Greinke scattered 11 hits. He gave up 11 hits. He walked 2 batters. He struck out 0. Somehow, through those 6 innings, he gave up just 2 runs. Honestly impressive. And some up from his defense and some really bad base running by Cleveland. They made 4 outs on the base paths yesterday, including 2 outs at third base. You don't do that. Like, that's stupid. You're not supposed to do that. That's what the Royals do. That's what bad baseball teams do. And Cleveland, well, they're actually not that great of a baseball team either. They're better than the Royals, but they're not that great of a baseball team. Shane Bieber looks like vintage Shane Bieber shutting down the Royals offense through his 6 innings of work. So through 6 innings, it's 2-0. Then we get through the 7th, it's 2-0. Then we get to the 8th, where the Royals were able to get something done. Drew Waters gets on base. Nicky Lopez gets around. Eventually, a run scores on a pinch hit sac fly of Edward Olivares that in 23 other ballparks is a 3-run home run as he just missed it, which, I gotta say, would have taken so much drama out of yesterday had Edward Olivares just hit that ball for a home run. Royals would have led 3-2 before going into the top of the 9th, and I bet Scott Barlow shuts it down because, shocker, Scott Barlow is still a good baseball player, even when he occasionally has some struggles. But nonetheless, the sacrifice fly makes it 2-1. And then Nick Prado hits a single because apparently he is allowed to make contact with the baseball. He gets an RBI single, makes it 2-2. It's 2-all. We go to the 9th. Scott Barlow does his work. Bottom of the 9th, Royals 3-3 down. We go to the 10th. Y'all know my feeling on the place runner. I think the place runner is stupid. It's not baseball. It is moronic. I despise it. The Manfred man is stupid, and I hate it. Because of that, Jose Ramirez was the place runner for the Guardians. He advances to 3rd on a ground ball. Aroldis Chapman gets a strikeout to make it 2 down. And then because Aroldis Chapman takes 30 million years to get to the plate, which honestly, I don't blame him. He's a reliever. His job is not really control the running game. It's just get guys out. But Jose Ramirez does an incredible heads-up move and steals home plate, which I got nothing but respect for. That was a great slide. It was a great lead. It was a great jump. Everything about it was amazing. I'm not mad. I'm truly not. If the Royals had lost 3-2 in the 10th because Jose Ramirez stole home, I could have honestly lived with that because at least it was a cool way to lose. But then comes the bottom of the 10th. Kyle Isbell gets to start on second base because of the Manfred Band rule. It does work for our team too. Ends up going, it begins to 1st and 3rd, nobody out because Nicky Lopez reaches on a basically chopper to 1st, and no one was covering the bag for some reason. Also very funny. So it's 1st and 3rd, nobody out. Eventually, Nicky gets to second base, 2nd and 3rd, 1 out. Well, I think it was still 1st and 3rd, 1 out. I thought Nicky should have stolen. That's why I think 2nd and 3rd. Freddie Fermin comes on to pinch hit because the pitcher spot was up because in the 9th inning, Bobby Witt Jr. moved to shortstop to strengthen defensively, and he was the DH. When you pull your DH out of the game, you lose the DH for the rest of the day, and that becomes the pitcher spot in the order. Just some housekeeping with that. So because of that, Freddie Fermin is to pinch hit. He has a great battle with Manuel Clase, including fouling off 2 very tough pitches below the knees, kind of filleted them off to the side. And then he ropes the double down the line. Nicky Lopez gets on his horse. He eventually scores from first base, and the Royals win 4-3. That's where we are. The Royals win. It was nice. You know, I get it. The team is bad. I'm never going to blame anybody for just being like, who cares anymore. I'm always going to enjoy wins. They're 23 and 58, so that like wording stinks. I hate that. I hate that it's only 23 wins. But I'm going to relish those wins when they come because they're fun. And more importantly, I'm going to relish the wins when the young offense is but it's the job done for this team. That's what's important to me. Last note, we'll talk about here about the game yesterday. We got a text from 785. Is Salvi okay? He was on the ground for after the steal of home. As far as I know, yes. He stayed in the game to finish catching that inning. The Royals have not released anything thus far about, Salvador Perez being hurt, whether he'll miss tonight's game, anything like that. So as far as I will say of what I know from what the club has released, he is fine. I would not be surprised if maybe he takes the day off. If in this first game against the Dodgers, they either don't have Salvi catch, or if Salvi is the DH tonight and Freddie Fermin catches to give Sal half day, I wouldn't be surprised. It was kind of a heavy collision, and then Sal had to kind of extend really awkwardly to make the play. But overall, I think Salvador Perez is going to be just fine, but we will wait and see if there's any updates from the Kansas City Royals about that. We're going to preview the Dodgers-Royals series and this game more in depth later on in the show. That'll come up to basically wrap up the program at the bottom of the 2 o'clock hour. But where I want to, though, break down here early is this game tonight is now interesting. If it was Jordan Lyles versus the Dodgers, I wouldn't blame for any of you not watching. The Dodgers would probably score like 6 runs off Lyles. It'd be boring, it'd be blah, and you go, eh. But we found out from Andy Rodgers, MLB.com, really the only person beat writing for the Royals right now, that Jordan Lyles woke up yesterday and went through yesterday. He is sick. And he is so sick and feeling so not well that he is not going to make his start this evening as the Los Angeles Dodgers. So first things first, I hope Jordan's okay. All jokes aside about him being a bad baseball player and how I don't want the Royals to have signed him, all the comments I've ever made about Jordan Lyles, the baseball player, pushed to the side for a minute, I do hope he's fine. Like, when you're so sick you can't do your job, there's the general, I hope you're okay. Maybe you just picked up a stomach bug and needs a couple days. Whatever it is, I hope Jordan's fine. Which makes this a spot start. Essentially, the odds are whatever you're doing here is only happening one time. Jordan Lyles is probably going to be back in the rotation next time through the order. But because of that, the Royals have some options. You could, if you are committed to Austin Cox being your new 5th starter, you now don't have an opener. You could have technically made this an opener start. And honestly, I would have gotten it. I probably wouldn't have been happy about it, but I would have gone, you know what? I get it. Go with an opener. Whatever. It's the Dodgers. You're going to lose no matter what. But the Royals have made a different decision. Alec Marsh, their number 14 prospect in their system, is scheduled to make his major league debut tonight against the Los Angeles Dodgers. I'm very excited for that. I'm incredibly excited to see what he can do. Now, because the move, and I'm going to double check, nothing has been announced yet. I don't think so. They never really announced this early. Yeah, there's nothing been announced this early. So there's always a chance that plans can change. There's a chance that they could not call up Marsh and maybe Lyles feels better, all this stuff. But if everything goes as expected and as per Andy Rodgers reporting, Alec Marsh makes his MLB debut tonight. And I'm interested to see what happens because Alec Marsh is a guy that I was on wanting to see what he could do last season. He was at AA last year. He's been up at AAA for 3 starts up to this point. And for what it's worth, for some numbers out there, in 3 starts for Omaha in his recent promotion, so about the past couple weeks, he's 2-0 with a 2.40 ERA at Omaha. He has looked excellent against the step-up in competition. So I'm very interested to see what this is, and I think Alec Marsh could be an interesting guy for potentially the future. Because for Alec Marsh, he has a big league fastball. Like, his fastball is excellent. That is the money pitch for him, is if he can play that up in the zone like he tries to, that is a pitch that can get big league hitters out. He has a very, very dynamic fastball. He's got a plus curve and a solid changeup. And then a few other offerings he can mix in as well. The issue for Marsh, which, unsurprisingly, this is an issue for a Royals pitcher, is walks. Marsh's command and his control are the one thing that could keep him from being an effective big league starter and could really hamper him tonight, especially against the Dodgers. The bright side for Marsh, and where I implore all of you, is if this is horrible and bad, like let's say Marsh goes 3 innings, gives up 8 runs, and it's just, it's a bloodbath out there. Cool, who cares? Because this is not on schedule. Like, in theory, Marsh shouldn't be up today. And I know at that point, some of you go, well, why bring him up at all if he's not ready? Because sometimes guys are ready faster than you think, and you just want to see what it looks like. You just want to give them an opportunity. Give them a taste of the big leagues, because let's put it in this context. Let's say Marsh tonight goes 5 innings, gives up 4 runs, scattering of hits, walks a couple, but gets like 5 strikeouts. It's not a terrible start, but not an elite one as well. That's a lot that he can take away against a team like the Dodgers to go back to Omaha and work on. There is a benefit to getting a taste, getting that cup of coffee in the big leagues. So that's the benefit to Marsh tonight, is he likely is only making this start and then immediately going back to Omaha. Like, that's what's going to happen. And also, actually, the more I think about it, you probably just actually kick James MacArthur back down to AAA Omaha tonight, because my lord, that guy is bad. Either way, my random opining to the side for a minute. Marsh tonight has no pressure because he isn't supposed to be up yet. He isn't expected to become a new member of the rotation. He's probably only here for one day. He would like to make a good impression. He would like to look well. But if he struggles, the Royals will just go, all right, that's kind of what we expected. We don't want it to be bad. We want him to play good and play well. But if he has some struggles, if he has some issues, we'll send him back to Omaha. We have more data to send with him. Let's work this out and let's fine-tune some things. There's benefit to that. And so that's why, if you can find a way to watch the Royals, because I know we all go on at length about how it's really hard to watch this team, and it truly is. The benefit to tonight is, if you are watching the game and tuning into the game, just focus on Alec Marsh. See how well he's doing. See how well he pitches. See what it's like. Seeing a guy make his big league debut who could legit... I think Austin Cox's long-term role is a bullpen arm for this team. I don't think he has long-term starter potential, and kind of that first start showed me why. That was also just kind of a rough day. I really think Alec Marsh can be a fourth or fifth starter on this team. I think Alec Marsh can be a homegrown, back of the rotation, maybe gets you 5 to 6 innings to start. ERA hovers around 4. A guy who keeps you in ball games. You probably don't win a ball game because he goes out and shoves for 2 runs in 7 innings. But he's a guy who, when he's out there, can keep you in the game, get you some quality starts, and give you chances to win. I really think he can be that if he finds some command. So I'm excited to see this, because the Royals, all this year is about is figuring out what you have and trying to perform and find a way to get some things done and perform at a higher level. And I think that's what this start for Marsh can be tonight. We're going to break it down. Like I said, we're going to break it down deeper coming up later on in the show today. We're going to look at what the Dodgers bring to the table. We're going to look at what this entire weekend could be, because this weekend against the Dodgers is interesting. All 3 youngsters are going. It is Marsh, it is Lynch, it is Singer. That is your rotation this weekend. 3 legit young guys who you want to be members of this team long term. They're getting a big test against the Los Angeles Dodgers, and I'm excited to see what they can do going forward. But it should be a fun one tonight for Marsh against the Dodgers. Hopefully it goes well, but overall, I'm just excited to get to see what he can do and see what he looks like at the big league level. And so more members of the fan base of Kansas City can really get an idea of who this kid is and how good this kid can be. We're going to do our first time out here on Mike Depp. Coming up next, the match was last night. I was not planning on watching all of it, and I did, because it was mildly entertaining. And unsurprisingly, those 2 dudes who are Super Bowl champions, yeah, they're champs again. We'll get to that coming up next on Mike Depp. So the match was yesterday. Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes versus Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Mahomes and Kelce won handily. They won 3-up in a scramble format. Pretty much dominated the entire way. And I had a couple big takeaways from it. One, Travis Kelce can actually play some golf. Like, it wasn't perfect. Just like Mahomes, it wasn't perfect, but Travis Kelce made some really good shots. The second takeaway I got is, man, Klay Thompson's bad at golf, man. Klay Thompson's not good. And listen, I know glass houses, glass stones, all that, because I'm really bad at golf. Like, I'm not good. No one would want to know what I shot when I played some golf on vacation. It wasn't great. But Klay Thompson was playing in this. I assumed he was better. Man, Klay Thompson's got like a 15 or 18 handicap or something like that, but it's fun. But then just overall, it is so great to get to see just these athletes chill. Like, getting to hear Steph and Klay chat and banter, and they chat and banter with, Pat and Travis. Just hearing these guys cut loose is always a great time and is enjoyable. And that was one of the most enjoyable matches in a while. I think it's because you had 4 legit entertaining personalities. Maybe ESPN should do, the match should do that a lot more. Speaking of that, that's our list today for Kyle and I. Athletes we want to see on the match. They don't have to be good at golf. They don't have to know how to play golf at all. Just guys we would honestly be fine with listening, chill around a golf course for a couple hours. That's everyone's list today. We're going to take a timeout. When we come back, Vahe, Gregorian of the Kansas City Store is going to join me as we chat a little bit at the Royal Stadium situation. Welcome back into Mic'd Up here on a victory Friday afternoon. The Kansas City Royals did get a win. They are allowed to win baseball games. They're not allowed to win a lot of them, but they are allowed to win baseball games. They beat the Cleveland Guardians 4-3 in extra innings. Fun fact, that is the first extra innings win of the season for the Royals. They had been 0-3 up to that point. I played not a lot of games in extras, which, given the state of their team, you're probably not surprised by the fact that they only had played 3 extra inning games to that point. But nonetheless, their first win in extras yesterday afternoon on the Freddie Fermin walk-off hit. We'd have Royals baseball coming up tonight here on the Sports Voice of Kansas 580 WIBW. But the Royals also had some interesting things come up off the field yesterday. John Sherman held a media availability, mainly asking about the new stadium that he's in a quest to get built for the Kansas City Royals. A lot of the questions were about that, a little about the team as well. But joining me now to talk a little bit about the stadium situation, to kind of break it down and get into the nitty-gritty of it, is the great Vahe Gregorian. He is the sports columnist for the Kansas City Star, covers so many different things for the Stars, written so many great pieces for the Kansas City Star. Cannot speak so highly enough about Vahe's work in the Star and on kansascitysports.com. You can follow Vahe on Twitter at @VGregorian. Vahe, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. And I guess first things first, just in a general sense, were there any major takeaways that you got from John Sherman speaking with the media yesterday and answering some of those questions about the stadium? Was there anything new or different, or just something you pulled away that really sticks with you from his availability yesterday afternoon with the Kansas City media?
Well, first, thanks for having me. Thanks for the great walk-up music, basically. I appreciate the intro. Here's what I was struck by yesterday, and I didn't feel like there was a lot more new information, but I was struck by John Sherman making the point that it's all a negotiation. And I think it's useful for us to remember that as a lens on this whole thing, because it's very easy to draw conclusions about stuff.
Looks like the gremlins once again getting into our phone system a little bit. Happens far more often than we'd like to think here a little bit. But we will try and get reconnected with Vahe here a little bit as he kind of popped off the line. But I think kind of to that point that Vahe was starting to expand upon, it is negotiations a little bit. And it is kind of a negotiation process and trying to work through and balance a little bit what we're trying to do and trying to figure out and trying to, kind of get set a little bit here. And that's all it is between the Royals and John Sherman and the entire ownership group, and with Kansas City as well, is it's balancing act, whether it is Jackson County, whether it's Clay County, whatever kind of has to be done for John Sherman, his ownership group, and everyone like that. It really comes down to making sure the negotiations work, and that, this isn't one-sided. This isn't about, the Royals are going to get all this, Jackson County gets all this. It isn't one-sided. It has to be kind of a balancing act here as Vahe rejoins us here on Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. And just, it's kind of to that point, Vahe, I think you make a great point. This is negotiations. That's what this is. It has to be kind of a both-sided process. It isn't just one side makes all the demands and that's the way it goes. Both sides kind of have to come and agree and make concessions, and that's how this has to work.
Yeah, that's right. And what's a little extra complicated about it is a really informative story that R. Sam McDowell and Kevin Hardy did a couple of weeks ago that sort of made the point that a lot of civic leaders, politicians in general, are frustrated with the Royals because they don't feel like they understand what the Royals are really seeking. And again, some of that it's hard to know what sort of their own leveraging and posturing on that too. So I just think it's useful for us who are in the bleacher seats here to remember that it's worth keeping an open mind. If you ask somebody to vote on this Royal situation today, I would just remind them, well, there's nothing to vote on because we don't even know what the site is yet. So I think there's a feeling of sort of and I don't know if it's the same there as right here, but I think there's a feeling of frustration among some fans. First of all, people still love Kauffman Stadium, but not even knowing what the precise concept is certainly keeps you from getting on board. So what I wonder is when the Royals finally do kind of declare that which of the two final sites will be the site, and give more specifics on just how the ballpark district around it will help serve a greater Kansas City, then maybe you get a little more to latch onto and embrace.
I think you're very correct on that, Vahe, and kind of the idea of the lack of specifics kind of creates this little split of it's hard to vote for something if you don't know what you're voting for. The Royals and John Sherman say they're going to make a decision on a site by the end of this summer. They're going to pick a site. They have, of course, the Jackson County site, kind of near the East Village, downtown, all that different area, and then there's this Clay County spot, kind of north of the river, that's been discussed a little bit. I want to actually focus on the Clay County site first here. Listening to John Sherman yesterday, it feels like the Clay County site exists as very much a fallback option and a contingency plan. But, and unless I'm wrong here, it feels like there's not a lot of specifics, even like a specific offer for the Clay County site yet. And that's much more of a nebulous kind of really gray area. Did you get that same sense as well, listening to John Sherman yesterday?
Well, I do, first of all, get the feeling it's certainly, they've heard enough that it's viable. But I do think you're right. There's less understood about what the tax ask would be in Clay County, where there's far fewer people. It's also a little unclear to me that I think there's something like several hundred acres within that it would be under consideration. I can't quite pinpoint to what degree that approaches the south side of the north side of the Missouri River. But he alluded to that yesterday because he was alluding to the Kansas City Current building at the Berkeley Riverfront on the other side. Now that becomes a little bit of a intriguing thing to think about if it starts to be playing off each other, and it's something that could really get to the riverfront. But I don't think we know enough to say that, and I still, until somebody can really help me understand better why this is a good spot for the greater good, I still feel like the whole point of this was to get downtown, and that's not downtown. So it's a little hard to tell how much is leverage, how much is real, but I can tell you that I do fully believe that that site is somewhere between viable and desirable, whether it's just the fallback. I can't quite say. I think in general that most involved would still probably prefer the East Village site, but again, I guess that's part of the negotiations. What becomes more affordable, doable, and expansive.
Over to the Jackson County site, the East Village site, there's been a lot of talk about, and John Sherman trying to point out, there'd be community benefits, and he would want that whatever they do to build up this area and part of the ballpark, and then, of course, this, entertainment ballpark village, whatever it ends up being called around it, supposed to add to the community benefits as well. What is kind of the viability of those community benefits? If there's been anything that you or anyone else in the media have been able to figure out, what do you think is kind of the idea with those community benefits to kind of keep up with the revitalization of downtown Kansas City? And I guess more to the point than that, do you think, 'cause I've heard this a little bit as well, do you think John Sherman or the Royals or anyone with it, there should be more of a, I guess, more stringent, open way of what those benefits are, rather than just the nebulous, oh, we're benefiting the community? Do you think there should be a more stringent, outlined way of exactly how the Royals are benefiting the community, since they would be developing so much land?
Well, I do think that, and I understand that it's a fluid process and that it's site dependent, but I do wish they would fill in, and I think it would be prudent for them to fill in a little more specifically just how this is going to help life in Kansas City. I really don't doubt the sincerity of that motive, but I just think, again, it's really not about whether they believe it and intend it. It's about selling that to the public. And, my belief, my understanding is that, okay, you'll have obviously there's construction jobs. Obviously, they hope there's many employment opportunities. It seems to me there will be that it's understood there'll be hotel, office space. I think there's efforts to make sure that that is inclusive and has access for underserved people in various positions. But even as you can hear me saying this, that I'm speaking with a certain broad vagueness because I don't really understand better than that. I think they could do more to try to be more explicit because really I'm just, Vahe Q citizen here, right? I just feel like, hey, I care about Kansas City. I care about the Royals. Tell me why this makes everything better for everybody. I'd like to know that.
Vahe Gregorian is my guest here on Mic'd Up, sports columnist for the Kansas City Star. You can follow Vahe on Twitter at @VGregorian here on the Flying Place Wine and Spirits phone line. Moving kind of with this stadium is, of course, there's obviously all the talk about what site will it be, what will the new building look like, all those different questions about the new place. But then there's been some questions about the K itself. And from a lot of people, there's some that are reticent to move because of different factors of just they don't want to help fund it. They don't believe we should be publicly funding a stadium. The sites they don't like. There's all these different factors. But then there's just a level of people that just, they love the K. They think the K is a perfectly fine spot. More importantly, when John Sherman remarks the K is out of date, it's older, it has issues, they see just the exterior and they maybe can't get that across. Do you kind of get this idea that the K is old and outdated? Do you feel that really that when John Sherman says it's time to leave the K, we need to leave Kauffman Stadium? Do you kind of agree with him there a little bit? Or do you think that, we could just reinvest this money in Kauffman Stadium and maybe make Kauffman Stadium a more long-term viable option?
Well, I can see a lot of different sides of the spectrum if that's a right way to put it. Because look, the K is now into its sixth decade, right? Into its 51st year. By the time the lease is done, it'll be 60 years old. That's a pretty good service time for a stadium. On the other hand, it does remain beautiful. The question that I think is difficult for everybody is trying to understand how much decay there is at the K. And, just because something is cosmetically beautiful doesn't mean that it's not eroding. And it's a little hard to know. You could talk to different experts and get a different opinion of whether it's really got structural issues. I mean, I'll note that one difference between the K and Arrowhead, for instance, is, of course, much more wear and tear with something that has 81 home dates a year versus something that has 9, 10, or 12, and all the attrition that comes with that. But again, I'm not an engineer. I don't really know anything other than what we get told by different sides. I do think this is pretty persuasive, though. I think that the opportunities for luxury suites, the revenues that will bring in, I think that's important and maybe even crucial to the Royals' ability to spend more money. Now, you can make a case that they're going to talk about that they can get $1 billion plus in private equity to invest in the ballpark district and the new stadium. Well, why can't they get $250 million in private equity going to get a better team now? But in a way, those are apples and oranges. I mean, I think it's very easy for us to get caught up in what's happening today, this really bad team. But I think in a lot of ways we're talking about two different things: a bad team, but also a multi-generational point of investment. Somewhere there is a marriage of those, and the Royals' ability to make money, though, is a factor in how they spend money.
I think that's a really great point, Vahe, and one that I think a lot of fans sometimes miss. We just see, you can spend all this money on a stadium. Why not spend it on the team? And I think you make a good point. It is kind of apples and oranges in a different way that you're spending that money, to where it's not as simple as just saying, just because I have the money, I can just spend it however I want in different things. One big thing I heard from John Sherman yesterday, he brought up the Chiefs and he brought them into the conversation. And I think we all know the Chiefs want to either move out of Arrowhead or just build something bigger in that same spot. I think it's kind of been an open secret. We all know it's going to happen, especially when there was, the report of the, land in Olathe the Chiefs were working on acquiring and different things like that. We all know at some point the Chiefs want a new stadium, but no one has said anything about them. They've kept it under wraps. Then John Sherman kind of says the quiet part out loud of like, we're working with the Chiefs about the lease. The Chiefs, re-upping the sales tax and all that. When it comes to the Chiefs specifically, what kind of an impact do you think they have on this Royal Stadium situation, both potentially positively and maybe getting voters on board or people on board to help get this new stadium funded, or even in a separate way if it could potentially cause some issues with the Royals wanting to move?
Pardon me for 1 second while I tell the dog to be quiet. Be quiet. Listen, I think here's a way to think about this. This might all look a little different if the Chiefs were the ones pushing this first, because I think the Chiefs, let's face it, they just have more goodwill and support right now, and I think that would arouse a different level of interest in this. But the Royals, felt more urgent, more eager to make this change. And I think John Sherman used this term in the context of that yesterday, that they're kind of out there taking the bullets on this, but really in the end, they're still, until this lease changes, they're financially attached at the hip. And obviously whatever the Royals choose to do and let's just assume for argument's sake, they will indeed leave and be able to leave. That has immediate implications for, okay, now what with the Chiefs? My sense is that, the Chiefs will hold close to their chest the possibility of they could go somewhere, like Kansas or let's say some other part of the region, but that they really have no such intention. I think the real deliberation to me is, do they think, what is a sunken cost, if I'm using the term right, or what's the right amount of money? What's the ratio of money and ability to reinvigorate Arrowhead further versus, okay, we have all this space now. We can tear down Kauffman Stadium. We can build, Chiefs World here, whether that's, an elaborate sort of, let's just say the term village, for lack of a better term, around it, or whether it's, perhaps a dome stadium. We're not getting too many specifics of that. I think it's interesting and useful to think about what those parameters could be, because a dome stadium would then make Kansas City a player in a different way in things like, Final Fours or hosting Super Bowls that it just can't do right now because of the way those things have evolved. So, that will be a months, if not years, of points to study, and I don't think we'll really get to do until we see what the Royals do.
Final two questions here for Vahe. Here are two for the road for you. First things first, with the Royals going to move downtown, we know the stadium's coming at some point. So if you could pick one feature to make sure that stadium has, whether it's the type of seating, an architectural feature, anything, just one feature you want the new downtown stadium to have, Vahe, what would you say it must have?
Well, that's a great question. I think this will sound, I've only lived here 10 years, but this will sound like I've been here 60. I really think it's crucial. Crucial is too strong, but I think it's meaningful to fans here that it still have a very prominent fountain presence that gives it at least echoes of Kauffman, because I think that's something that is hardwired into how people like the stadium. And for all the amenities it needs, all the fancy things it needs, it's funny, I think they still need some common denominators with their tradition.
I'm 100% with you. If I had one thing, it's the fountains. Kansas City is the city of fountains. When you think of Kauffman, you think of the fountains. It's got to have fountains in some way. And my final question here for you, Vahe. I know you're a soccer guy and a World Cup guy. World Cup coming to Kansas City, coming up in 2026. They'll be one of the host sites. What is, as of now, as we sit here in 2023, what is the number one thing you're looking forward to when the World Cup comes stateside?
What I'm really looking forward to is less about the competition than about the people coming to Kansas City. I've been fortunate to cover 10 Olympics, and I can tell you that there is something magical, out of body about the feeling of the whole world coming together. And when you multiply that by the feeling of this city getting to host that, and I just think it's going to be special in ways that people who haven't had the fortune to go to events like this before will really not believe. And I think it's going to be to me the highlight of what it feels like to have the World Cup here.
I'm right there with you. I think it's going to be just a very, very special moment. And I'm excited for all these great international folks to get to see how great of a city Kansas City is. Vahe, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon, my friend. Have a great rest of the weekend and a safe and happy 4th of July.
Absolutely. Same back at you. And thanks so much for having me.
That is Vahe Gregorian of the Kansas City Star. That's it for the noon hour. 1 o'clock hour. Mic'd Up coming up next. Time for hour number 2 of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster here with you, writing mostly solo. We'll bring Kyle Manthe in on this hour for Everyone Loves the List. As Jake LeBon has the day off, he is off today, starting his 4th of July weekend. He's also off on Monday for his 4th of July weekend, so Jake gets a 5-day break. I'll hold down the fort for today and on Monday. Kyle and I got you. We got you handled. Jake will be back on July 5th. Want to thank Vahe Gregorian for coming on last hour. It is always so fun to chat with Vahe with just such a different insight in the fact of the different things he gets to cover for the Kansas City Star and some of his thoughts there. And looking at the stadium and what this stadium will be for the Royals. I know some people are I get it. I get the fatigue on so much Royal stuff. I really, trust me, I get it. I am far more emotionally attached to the Royals than any respectable human being should be. Most of you should look down on me probably for how much I let this team dictate my life. But this stadium, there's such an illicit of emotions around it because, one, the team is bad and you'd rather the team be good and they get a fancy new building to play in. But also, we're talking about taxpayer money and funding and all this stuff, and it's such a complex and multifaceted issue. It's always nice to get different perspectives on it as well. So I want to thank Vahe for coming on and lending his perspectives from him being at that media availability yesterday and talking with John Sherman and hearing him answer some of those questions directly to get his thoughts on what overall was going on down there as well. Coming up this hour on Mic'd Up, we're going to look at NIL donor fatigue, something that Jake and I speculated would happen and would be the thing that would get everyone off their high horse about, this limitless spending. At some point, the guys providing the money were going to slow down. That was going to happen, and we're already starting to see it. So I will look at that as well in a report from On 3 Sports. Bottom of this hour, we're going to talk about the way the Royals have constructed their team, and more importantly, a comment from John Sherman about the nucleus of this team and spending money in free agency that got some people up in arms, but for me, just makes a lot of sense. And we're going to look at that as well as well. Everyone loves the list. Kyle and I, in honor of the match that happened yesterday, that said many variations, I thought about this. Just who we want to see play in the match, regardless of golf ability. We are taking out whether these athletes are good golfers at all. Maybe the appeal for us, for some of these, is that they should be bad golfers, and that's very funny to watch. But overall, what guys do we think it would be entertaining to see take part in the match, either because of their personality, who they are, their abilities, their standing in the sports community, etc. Overall, just Kyle and I, who we think would be good athletes for the match. We're not going to pick pairings. We're not going to pick what their teams would be. Just what athletes we think would be the best for the match, since this is a thing that apparently is going to happen every single year. And they should do it more like they did this year. Just get entertaining dudes who can kind of play golf and put them together. That's what makes it fun. That's what makes it legitimately entertaining, legitimately enjoyable. All that's coming up here in the 1 o'clock hour of Mic'd Up. As always, you can join in on the conversation on our text line, 785-272-9429. And also up in the comment section of our YouTube live stream. Just go to youtube.com. Sports on 580 is that YouTube channel. You can jump into the comment section as well. But all of that, many words being said, where we begin this hour is with NIL donor fatigue. And what do I even mean when I say that? Well, in a great lengthy piece from on3.com, one of the many different sports sites out there, by Erica Prisbell of on3.com. We're about 3 years into NIL. This is the third year of NIL. The anniversary of it is tomorrow. It was July 1st, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now, that there was the ruling that basically said NIL can exist, that athletes in college can make money off of their name, image, and likeness. And as some college coaches and members of the college sports world would like you to believe, the Wild West was born. Well, the Wild West was born because you guys did nothing to set up anything in place when you knew this was coming. Like, there was a gap in time before it all started where, like, everything became federally good to go. You can't stop this. There was a gap between learning that it was going to happen and when it got implemented. In that time, the NCAA, coaches, leaders in college athletics could have gotten together, draft some policy, put together a coherent list of rules that everyone everywhere had to follow, regardless of anything else, that I'm sure at the federal and state levels would have said, yes, all right, we're blanket covering this. This is how it works. We're not contradicting anything else. This is the rule every single college athlete must follow. Instead, they did nothing. They sat there and they did nothing. And now we get these varying amounts of rules and regulations kind of switching and flipping and flopping depending on what state you're in and all these different things. And everyone gets mad and upset, but really have no one to blame but yourself. I will add, like, you all know, any of you who have been listeners to our program over the past, for Mike Dove specifically, the past year, to 580 sports programming in general, the past several years. You know where all of us, myself, Jake, Brendan, Dan, our 580 Sports Talk dudes, you know where we all four stand. We are in favor of NIL. We think players should be compensated. If these universities and athletic departments and TV places and all this, if all these people are going to make billions of dollars on the backs of college athletes, we just believe it's okay for them to get a piece of the pie. Maybe it's a small piece of the pie, but a piece of the pie. But I'm not here to debate that with any of you today. So if you agree or disagree, if you agree, awesome, cool, we're gravy. If you disagree, I respect your opinion. I respect your right to have that opinion. That's not what this is about. Because what we want to discuss here is donor fatigue and NIL. And what that means, as I circle back all the way to the beginning of the point here, is NIL and the money these athletes get are essentially funded by collectives. To kind of give some background here. Collectives are just a thing. These university athletic departments, well, they get set up with, are directly tied to the athletic departments. There's a bunch of, bureaucracy there, but they're basically connected. Either way, they're set up by donors to be basically a repository of funds and a way for those people in charge to connect donors and businesses and people that want to give money to these athletes with the athletes themselves. The collective's the middleman. And part of that is taking in money from donors. Well, a big thing Jake and I were always discussing was these are investments. That's what these donors are doing. And these donors are often very wealthy people who are successful in the world of business, usually, not always, but usually, which means they're not often throwing their money around willy-nilly. They want ROI, return on investment. That is what they want. If they don't get it good enough, they're going to stop investing money. That's how they've often, outside of other potential reasons, made a lot of their money in their lives. So Jake and I theorized at some point, because everyone was like, this money's getting out of control. These guys are donating, everyone out here, these guys and gals are donating so much money to all these collectives and these athletes, and the spending's just, it's going to be a spending war, and someone's just going to keep cutting checks for millions and hundreds of thousands of dollars and handing them over. Our point was, at some point, the donors are going to want to see a return on that investment. And if they don't, they're going to stop giving money. And in year 3 of NIL, we are already starting to see that. We're starting to see that with this collective model, with the model that essentially you accept your collective's for the athletic department or the athletics the athletes of a specific university, like KU as their Mass Street, whatever collective. I'm apologize. I don't know. I think K-State has a collective, and if they do, I do not know the name off the top of my head, and I do apologize for that. I'm unsurprisingly more knowledgeable about KU than K-State because I just see a lot of things. Being an alumnus of KU, I even get like emails from the Mass Street Collective. It's really annoying that they think I have money to give to them. Like both the university and the collective occasionally ask me for money. I'm like, guys, I work in radio. No. Either way, that weird tangent aside, the collectives get their money from donors. And what we're starting to see here already is that because of a lot of different factors, that being athletic departments and collectives are separate things. Like they're not tied together. So monies that donors give to the collective don't go to the athletic department as well. They're kind of separate. So donors, part of this is donors have to decide, are they giving to the collective or the athletic department, or for a lot more money, give to both, which some of them don't want to do. There's not a lot of return there. The other simple fact that's led to some donor fatigue, and let's just be honest here, the economic situation in the United States, it changes. It's up and it's down. It's kind of more down than up right now. That's causing some different boosters to pump the brakes on their different things and they're giving. And then this is in the report from On3 here by Eric Brisbell. He adds, and we're getting deep into some weeds here, so I do apologize for any of that. The IRS sent out a memo that basically said some of these collectives register as nonprofits. I believe in this report, it says 80 of the 200 plus nationwide collectives are registered as nonprofits. The IRS has sent out a memo basically saying, yeah, if you give to a collective, even if they have a nonprofit status, we're probably not going to make that tax deductible, which makes donors even more hesitant to stop giving. And the other big fact is, what is the ROI that they want? Going to this, kind of pulling a quote here from this piece by Eric Brisbell on 3. He says, quote, "It's not the price of winning. There are no on-field, on-court guarantees. It's merely the price for these donations. Short-term optimism. Filling a collective's coffers provides a jolt of adrenaline for an athletic program, however temporary. So for the Garden Variety State U collective donor, sources say, where's the guaranteed ROI? If the ROI is a college football playoff berth, that's one thing. If the ROI is a Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl berth, which is still a great sponsor for the Sun Bowl, by the way, that's quite another. Well-heeled boosters have deep pockets, but those pockets are not bottomless. Leaning so heavily on donors begs the question, is this model sustainable? And that is the big question with NIL right now in the current model we have set up. Because in the current model, this is all donor built. Everything for this money essentially is donor built. You might have here and there direct partnerships with, companies and there's, direct advertising. That again is into the weeds that I don't have the expertise to get into. It's really nitty gritty. And trust me, I'm not a marketing guy or an advertising guy or a business guy. That's not what I do. You can tell by the way I speak and what I talk about. Me and business don't always get along the most. But essentially, this current model is just built so heavily on donors. Their pockets are not bottomless. They have limits to their spending. And so with that, it seems like this voter fatigue is kind of it's starting to pick up because these donors aren't seeing returns on their investment. As Eric Brisbell said, the return isn't you're buying a championship. As much as some people want to make comments about with the transfer portal and NIL, people are buying players and buying teams. I saw somebody, basically said that LSU bought their baseball title. So that is patently false. Like, so incredibly incorrect. That, that's what's happening. It's not, though. It's not as simple as that. All these NIL donors are doing when they donate to these NIL collectives, they're just saying short term, we can inject a little happiness. We can make the vibes good, to use the kids' term. We can make the vibes immaculate for a little bit because we're putting all this money into the system. We see the money coming in. And so then we think, all right, we can use that to do the different points of, where our team's getting better and we're putting together a better product on field. But the problem is you're trying to figure out what to do with some of that money. And now, going into this further deep in this article by On3, this is also starting to affect the athletic departments as well. Because you go from, because for a while in athletic departments, the big thing was you got to have the best facilities. Got to have top tier locker rooms. Got to have the big screen TVs in everyone's locker. Got to give them their own recliner to hang into. Got to put in the cryotherapy chambers. Got to put in the sleep pods. Got to put in, they got to have an Xbox and a PS5 and a Switch and a pool table and an arcade table and some weird fancy virtual reality. Like, you had to put all this fancy stuff in a locker room. That's what recruits wanted. That was the splitting point and the sticking point. Now, though, should you spend that money on athletic facility upgrades? Or should you reserve it for your collectives? Going to Brisbale's piece here, he talks about Maryland. Maryland, the University of Maryland, their football team, just moved into a $149 million football-only facility. But Terrapins football coach Mike Loxley told The Athletic, he said, quote, unfortunately moved in at a time when facilities have been de-emphasized in a recruit's mind because they did get dressed in the trash can for $25,000. It's not as simple as that, but that's where this fact is as well. And I guess the overall thesis to kind of try to bundle all this together, because there's a lot of different points and viewpoints and things like that out there. For every person that is frustrated with NIL and says it's, you're buying players or you're buying this or buying that, that era is already rapidly coming to a close. The model is going to have to change. This donor-led model, this donor-only model, essentially can't keep going. Like, it's going to have to change at some point because these athletic departments and these collectives have to seek out so many donors and try to find new donors and new people to give to the collective and different people to add and build up their coffers and fill their pockets. At some point, we're probably going to get a different system come in that might be a little bit more balanced. It might be, a way to try and balance this out and make it work and make it more sustainable. I don't know what that model is. I don't know what the long-term model of NIL is. There are some thoughts out there, and there's some ways to maybe stabilize what it is to allow players to profit off of their success. But this idea that this Wild West, this money-spending arms race, that everyone's going to spend all this money, it's just not true. And more importantly, it's not true to the extent of it's not sustainable. And we'll see what it is going forward. But I find it very interesting. Jake and I theorized donor fatigue was going to come. All you people out there saying, we're just going to keep throwing money for forever. We said at some point, these people want returns on investments, and they're going to start slowing down their spending. That day's already starting to arrive. So NIL's in an interesting spot going forward. Before we take a timeout, Vance on the YouTube comment helps me out here. K-State's collective's name is the Wildcat NIL. Thank you, Vance, for that. That is a clever, clever name. I'm not taking a shot here. K uses Mass Street Collective. Like, that's like maybe 2 points more funny, like more creative than Wildcat NIL. It's still not like, if you've been to Lawrence and know the things about Lawrence, Mass Street, pretty basic answer you can give to that, but very interesting nonetheless. We'll take a time out here on Mike Depp. Coming in next time for Everyone Loves a List. Time for Everyone Loves the List here on Mic'd Up. And with that, I bring in my good man, Kyle Manthey, to help me out with that. Kyle, we're picking the match athletes for Everyone Loves the List today. Just guys, we think it could be entertaining to watch play the match. What's your number 4?
Number 4, I have Magic Johnson. It could crash and burn, but if you've ever seen his tweets, I just want to see if he would behave on the golf course like he tweets on Twitter.
Man, that was a really good drive there. If I can get this up onto the green, I might be able to putt it in. I honestly,
Perfect.
Kyle, that's a good call. I need that live commentary. Number 4 for me, second best tight end of the NFL. Give me George Kittle. George Kittle's a real energetic nut job. I don't know if he's good at golf at all, but I bet he'd be very entertaining to watch play golf.
Number 3, I have Deion Sanders. We've already seen he can do multiple sports. Why not golf? The
Yeah.
trash talk would be great.
I agree with you there. Number 3 for me, the trash talk wouldn't be great, but I just want to see how loose you could get him, and he's good at golf. Zach Greinke. Absolute oddball that I kind of just want to see what happens if you just put him on a golf course with cameras around.
That's a really good answer. Number 2 for me, I have Patrick Mahomes. As a Kansas City Chiefs fan, I just want to see him do stuff in the least creepy way possible.
That's fair. That's very fair. Number 2 for me, Shohei Ohtani, entirely on the balance of what can't he do? I want to find the limits. I want to test the limits of what that man can or cannot do. Give me Shohei Ohtani on a golf course. Plus, he's legitimately funny.
Number 1, he was there last night, kind of. I want to see Charles Barkley. He just emanates just fun. He's just fun.
Chuck is fantastic. Number 1 for me, in the vein of Chuck, though, Shaquille O'Neal. I don't know if that man can play golf. I don't know if he can find golf clubs big enough to fit Shaquille O'Neal. But I want to see that lumbering goofball play golf and play the match with several other people. That's what I want to see. I think it'd be fantastic. I think I'd love just every single minute of it, and I think it'd be hilarious. So Shaquille O'Neal, my number 1. If you want to let us know who you, different athletes you want to see on the match, be sure to chime in on the text line, 785-272-9429. And then, of course, in the YouTube live section, comments as well. We're going to take a timeout. When we come back, the Royals, they're the young nucleus and spending. I have some thoughts. John Sherman has some thoughts. We'll get to that coming up next. Welcome back into Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Got a great suggestion for match athletes on the text line from the 785. Both Kelsey brothers and beer card is mandatory. That is better than any idea I came up with, I can confidently say. Jason and Travis playing golf with each other and telling them, new rule though, they have to finish a beer per hole. We can slow it down to maybe a beer every 2 holes if we need to. But I've seen those two boys drink. We've seen videos. Give me, Jason and Travis, a beer per hole. The problem is, I don't think you can put that on basic television. Or the poor people in the truck will get worn out with the dump button. But give me like a pay-per-view of that where they could be also fully uncensored. Would be fantastic. Vance in the YouTube comments also adds the Manning brothers. That would be good. And I will ask, though, are we talking just Peyton and Eli? Or are we getting Cooper up in here? Because Cooper, low-key, kind of funny. Never talked about, but kind of entertaining. But at least Peyton and Eli would be great because they literally just bicker at each other all the time. Like, the Manning cast is great. And the Manning cast, for me, the only time I tune into the Manning cast is when they don't have their guests on. Them two being interviewers, I don't think is a good move. Like, it's fine, but it depends. It's not great. Peyton and Eli just, shooting the breeze with each other while watching something is great comedy. It's so awesome. And I want to see it happen more and more. So also Peyton and Eli. Peyton's done the match before. He was part of the second installment of the match. There was Peyton Manning. So, get Eli up in there. It might actually be thoroughly entertaining. Here in the bottom of the 1 o'clock hour of Mic'd Up, I wanted to talk about some comments from John Sherman about the team itself. Not about the stadium, but about the team itself. Because there's been, for the most part, a lot of questioning. And this stems back to the David Glass era. This isn't just like a John Sherman thing. But about not spending money in free agency. And John Sherman was straight up asked, are you tanking? He said, is that what's happening? Which also, I honestly can't remember who that was. I can't remember who that was. It was a member of the Kansas City sports media, obviously. I can't remember specifically who that was because it was just by voices and I couldn't only recognize some of them. But one elite question, just to look John Sherman in the face and go, hey, Sherm, are you tanking? Are you losing intentionally? Are you burying this team down? To which Sherman unsurprisingly said no, but this is what John Sherman said in response to, are you tanking and spending money in free agency, which I thought was very interesting.
No, I don't. I'm not sure the definition of tanking, but
you feel what you're doing is different than what maybe the Astros did.
well, what I was saying that they went through a lot of pain and they did well in the draft. They developed their players. They won 2 World Series, and same with it's just, and I see what I think if you think about what could we do right now and what could I have done in the off season. Wouldn't have made any sense to go sign a big player until we know we have the nucleus, and we've got to have that nucleus, and then we'll figure out what the remaining pieces of the puzzle are, and we're going to be more than willing. We're ready to spend some money, but it's about really the missing pieces of the puzzle to make sure that we're ready to compete and get back in the postseason.
Jake and I discussed this briefly yesterday when I discussed the quote in the very limited time we had. And the part for me that stands out the most is when it makes sense to sign a big player until we have a nucleus. We are ready to spend some money, but it's more about the missing pieces of the puzzle and being ready to compete. For any of you out there who say, you can, telling John Sherman, put your money where your mouth is, I will believe you're ready to spend money when you do. I don't believe any of you. Truly, I don't. But the logic John Sherman puts out with that, I'm 100% behind. And this is even beyond being a small market team, the best teams, even the ones with the highest payrolls, the way you do this is you identify what is your core. Who are the players you're building around? Who are the centerpieces of your team? For the Rosen 14 and 15, it was Eric Hosmer, Mike Moustakas, Lorenzo Cain, to a level Alcides Escobar and Alex Gordon. you had your core was your lineup. It was your hitters. So the Royals knew, well, to supplement that core, we don't need to go get hitters. We got to go get pitching, which led to trading for James Shields, acquiring Jeremy Guthrie. Giordano Ventura, rest in peace, his soul, was a big part of that. Jason Vargas, even. Good old Vargas. The World Series winning year, trading for Johnny Cueto. Ben Zobrist was the last addition to the lineup. They identified they needed pitching, and specifically in 2015, they knew they needed one more pitcher to get over the top, and they knew they needed a second baseman, which is why they got Ben Zobrist and why they got Johnny Cueto. So I get John Sherman's point. His point is, we could spend all this money right now and spend it willy-nilly. We could. But you don't know what you need. Let's say before the season started, the Royals were like, man, we saw Bobby at shortstop a little bit, but I don't think it's going to work. Let's go sign a new shortstop. Let's put Bobby at third for forever. Go sign a new shortstop. Cool. Maybe that helps in the short term. But you wouldn't have figured out that Bobby can be a plus defender at short, or that Maikel Garcia can be a plus defender at third, or all these different things, like a snowball effect. They need to identify what their core is first. And this goes back to rebuilding and losing and taking some time to lose. And everyone's tired of that. And like I always say, I am sympathetic to that plight. I'm tired of losing. I am tired of watching this team 7 out of 10 nights, actually at this point, 8 out of 10 nights, be losers. I hate that. It hurts. It sucks. It is painful. But I get the Royals in the idea of, we are going to take this season, spend lightly to, fill in a couple gaps. But overall, we're not going to spend big money on big free agents until we know what our nucleus is. And I get it, because I think it's smart. Because the smart teams take their nucleus and supplant it with free agents. Get free agents that benefit it. Let's say you identify that your long-term nucleus is Vinny Pasquantino, Bobby Witt Jr., Maikel Garcia, Nick Pratto, Drew Waters. Let's go with those 5. All right. You need a left fielder. You need a right fielder. And I mean, Salvador Perez can kind of sit in there at catcher, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. But you need a couple outfielders, and then you need pitching. And your thought probably immediately goes to, well, thinking about it, we could probably take care of the outfield homegrown. We got enough guys. They're light bats, but they're bats that could work in the outfield just to kind of round out the order. Those 6 up top can do all the heavy lifting. We'll throw a couple guys at the bottom who, might not be big players, but they're good enough to kind of, turn the lineup over. You can do that. Or more importantly, you probably don't need big bats in free agency. Couple light bats, couple of just a little bit to round out your order. But then what did you learn? You learned, oh boy, we don't got a lot of pitching. We're back in 2015. Man, we just don't have a lot of pitching. Let's go get that. Let's spend a bunch of money on Aaron Nola. Get Andrew Heaney. Trade the Dodgers for a couple of their pitching prospects. Get some guys from the Guardians or the Rays or different teams like that. You've now learned what you need. It's a hard like, we can look at the Royals right now and think, well, they need everything. The team is in, which that's kind of true. Like, the Royals need a lot. From a depth standpoint, they need a ton. But from trying to be competitive on the top, you have to figure out what your nucleus is and what type of players you have. Because also, to just kind of expound upon this a little bit, maybe the Royals figure out with all their bats that, man, we really need a right-handed power bat. Bobby and, Sal's power is kind of come and gone. Bobby's not in the power we thought he would be. Maikel's the light hitter. Man, all of our power's from the left side. Well, all right. You figured something out. Go get you a power right-handed bat. I don't know who that would be. I'm not going to, I don't have names without my head, but now you know what you're looking for. So rather than just blindly spending money, you can spend it more intelligently. And this all circles back to a heavy part of this is John Sherman's got to actually put his money where his mouth is. And I'm not saying I think he will. I hope he will. I would like to believe him. Because for the most part, outside of, some stadium talk, workaround, politic answers, John Sherman's been a straight shooter. He was asked a little bit about this season, and I don't have the audio cut for that, but he was essentially asked about this season and how it's gone. And John Sherman admitted this was going to be an evaluation season, but we didn't expect to be this bad. We didn't expect this to be where we're at, that this is disappointing to be where we're at. And more importantly, John Sherman noted and said out loud that there are guys who are not doing what we thought they would be. Guys who our evaluations were off. The Royals organization under Dayton Moore was loyal to a fault. And I've talked about that at length, that they had just an inability to move on from guys when it was time. That their thought was, well, we're just going to hang on to everybody as long as we can. We want to keep giving everybody opportunities. We want to be loyal to our guys. That's why Hunter Dozier got 1 billion opportunities. At this point, I think John Sherman and J.J. Piccolo are, at least right now, halfway into their first real tenure together. It feels like they are willing to admit when their evaluations were wrong. They cut bait on Hunter Dozier. They cut bait on Franmil Reyes fast. Like, that experiment bottomed out really quickly. And J.J. Piccolo and John Sherman were like, well, we screwed that up. Let's move on. That doesn't seem like much, and it seems those moves, you look at them and go, well, duh, they did that. That was a simple move to make. That was pretty straightforward. But compare it to the old regime. We spent years saying Hunter Dozier wasn't it. You should just get rid of him. And they never did, and they finally did. The old regime would have signed Franmil Reyes, and he'd still be on the team. Toiling away, striking out all the time, which is thought of, man, he's just a little bit away. He's plugging away. They cut bait on Jackie Bradley Jr., not as fast as I would like, but that was also because of injuries. There is signs that this team is willing to admit when they're wrong and try and fix it. So when John Sherman tells me what they want to do is identify a nucleus and then supplant that nucleus with talent. As of now, and I'm willing to look back on this day, look back on June 30th, 2023, when the Royals are, a year or two down the road and they have a nucleus, but John Sherman's penny pinching. I'm willing to look at it and say, wow, I was a big moron. But I really think with the way this organization's moving, I don't think they're going to spend big money. That's just never the Royals are going to be. And it's annoying because they could spend so much more than they do. These owners crying poor is really annoying. But at the same time, I really think the Royals might actually start doing something. And I think they're going to do something this offseason for the only reason of John Sherman has basically said they want to get a ballot measure on the ballot box in April. Well, that's when baseball starts. That means if John Sherman wants this to work, he needs to make a splash in free agency. And that splash doesn't mean spending Steve Cohen New York Mets money. But the Royals went out and signed Aaron Nola for $80 million. Went out and got Andrew Heaney for $30 million. Signed a couple top, higher level pitchers and said, we're going to put a lot of money in these guys to bolster our rotation. You think that can maybe make some people go, wow, John Sherman actually is going to put money into this team. Maybe I will give him a new stadium. I'm not saying that is what he's going to do. I'm not saying that's what voters will do themselves. But that's where I think this team is trending. So I just found it so interesting when he made that comment. And more importantly, the reaction to that comment by some people. The point that Sherman makes with us is that they don't have a nucleus right now. It hasn't been created. They don't know. They're figuring out what it is. The one name you can for sure put in there, two names you can put in there, are Bobby Witt Jr. and Vinny Pasquantino. I think you can confidently say those two guys are foundation pieces for this team. I don't think any other name applies. I don't think any other guy has played himself into has to be here territory. I think Michael Garcia is the next closest. But I've gone on length about, I think maybe long-term at second base, he'd be great. But also there is some real value in shaking this up and trading him. And I see both sides of it. I'm not advocating for either side heavily, one over the other. But that's where, I think he could be either way. But that's what this season is, and it stinks, and it's brutal, and, it makes the game, when you can watch it, unbearable to watch. But it at least is refreshing. John Sherman recognizes where we're at. He recognizes where the Royals are at. He recognizes this year's a disappointment, and he knows this team needs to be better. But it's just how quickly we get that better and how much money he's willing to spend, we'll see. But John Sherman says he's willing to spend some money. His first test is this offseason. Because with you got a ballot measure coming up and you need to get out of the doldrums of obscurity, open the checkbook, put a bunch of zeros on it, and go get some players. You'll see as we get closer to, the offseason when I start really championing it. I really want Aaron Nola to be a Kansas City Royal next season. I've always loved Aaron Nola's game. He's good at the free agent market. That guy can front your rotation. Go get him. He's going to cost you a lot of money because not only will he just be on the open market and is a good player, you got to pay the bad team tax. You always overpay even more when you're a bad team. But do it. Do it, John. Go get Aaron Nola this offseason. Put him in a Royals uniform. Because you do that, you spend the money to do that. Well, I think myself and a lot of people start believing maybe John Sherman is ready to spend on this team. We'll take one final timeout. We'll wrap up the 1 o'clock hour of Mic'd Up coming up next. The All-Star starters have been announced for the American League and the National League. The fan voting wrapped up yesterday, so all the starters were announced. Unsurprisingly, no Royals are All-Star starters. Bummer. Big surprise. I know that shocks every single one of you listening right now. Your American League All-Star starters, a lot of Texas Rangers represented. They had the most starters of any individual team. Jonah Heim, catcher from Texas, will be the starting catcher. Yandy Diaz will be the starting first baseman from Tampa Bay. Marcus Semien, the starting second baseman for the Rangers. Corey Seager, the starting shortstop. Josh Young, the rookie third baseman for the Rangers. So an nearly entire Rangers infield outside of Yandy Diaz. The outfield for the American League, Mike Trout, Randy Arozarena of the Rays, and Aaron Judge. The DH for the American League, the top vote getter for the American League, Shohei Ohtani. Big surprise. Your National League All-Star starters have an Atlanta Braves flair to them, as well as the Dodgers. Sean Murphy, catcher of the Braves, will be the starting catcher. Freddie Freeman for the Dodgers will be at first base. Luis Ariz, who's flirting with 400, will be at second from Miami. Orlando Arcia, the Atlanta Braves shortstop, replaced Dansby Swanson. He's at short. Nolan Arenado making another start at third base, representing the Cardinals. The outfield will be Ronald Acuna Jr. of the Braves, Corbin Carroll, the rookie center fielder for the Arizona Diamondbacks, and Mookie Betts for the Dodgers. The DH for the National League will be J.D. Martinez. Ronald Acuna Jr. was your leading vote getter for the National League. The most entertaining part of this that I really like of a fun fact about the All-Star game this year, this is the first year ever that the American League starters and the National League starters will feature a rookie apiece. Josh Young, the rookie third baseman for Texas, and Corbin Carroll, who can really play baseball. Like, Corbin Carroll is going to win Rookie of the Year and get MVP votes, more than likely. He's that good. We'll start for the National League. First time ever that we're going to have a pair of rookie starters for the American and National League. The rest of the reserves will be announced as time goes, along the pitching staffs as well. That'll do it for the 1 o'clock hour. Mic'd up. 2 o'clock hour coming up next. Time for the final hour of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster with you, taking you home on the final hour. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I appreciate you listening as always. Coming up in the final hour of Mic'd Up, we're going to talk about the Royals' new stadium. I know we've talked about this a lot. Jake gave his thoughts yesterday. I'm giving my thoughts today. And I have a lot of cuts here of some things John Sherman said yesterday that I just found interesting. His thoughts on why residents should vote yes, why residents should foot the bill for a public stadium for public funding when he is worth and his, ownership group is worth billions of dollars. His thoughts leaving the K, and so on and so forth. So we're going to really break that down and get into John Sherman's thoughts and try and really dissect and analyze why the Royals are going to move away from Kauffman Stadium and eventually go downtown, likely by about 2028 or so. We're going to have this week's edition of On Second Thought, where basically I look back at something I said or thought earlier this week, or, sometimes maybe a little bit week older than that. We just, we kind of fudge the numbers a little bit. But either way, we kind of look back at something we said and go, we need a bit of a mulligan. So we have that coming up this hour as well. And then I'm going to preview the Royals and Dodgers series. Take mainly a look at Alec Marsh, his first start tonight. Maybe by the time we get rolling, we'll get a little bit more update from the Kansas City Royals. But this is a 7:10 first pitch tonight. So they are usually late with some announcements. Those all might come during 580 Sports Talk. You can, of course, as always, with the first pitch at 7:10 for the Royals tonight. Pre-game begins at 6:30 right here on your sports voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW. 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. We'll be from 3 to 6 today. The boys got you. They're both here. They can hold down the fort. They're going to have a great show for you right after I'm done. So finish this last hour and then stick around. You're Brendan and Dan. Two fantastic guys who do some great work here. And then we'll have a little 580 Sports Talk overtime as well, leading you into Royals baseball coming up at 6:30. As always, you can join in on the conversation on the text line, 785-272-9429. And you can jump into the comment section of our YouTube live stream as well. Go to youtube.com. Sportsman 580 is that YouTube channel, and you can chime in with your thoughts and comments as well. Before I get to John Sherman, this is just a minor side comment. There's been a lot of layoffs at ESPN today as they continue to shift away from different things and cuts. And there's been some interesting people let go today. Jeff Van Gundy, Jalen Rose, LaFonso Ellis for basketball coverage, all gone. I believe Susie Colbert announced that she will be laid off at ESPN. Then this just out, and we'll wait for further confirmation from Pro Football Talk and Mike Florio. Looks like Todd McShay, one of the leaders in draft coverage alongside Mel Kiper, looks like Todd McShay might also be out at ESPN. So you can think whatever you want about ESPN and their coverage. We can all have our opinions about that. People losing jobs, though, is rarely ever a good thing. In very little circumstances, is it ever not a kind of bummer when you see some of these people in this industry lose their work, lose their jobs? So hope everybody laid off at ESPN today lands on their feet and can find some great works, because there might be some people that I, either disagree with their takes or don't think are that great in the industry or what have you, whatever personal opinions I might have. There are definitely some great people that have been laid off today by ESPN. So hopefully they land on their feet, and hopefully ESPN knows whatever the hell they're doing, because they have made some sweeping cuts today, including also, this was not today, but recently they let Neil Everett go. Ooh. Stan Verrett and Neil Everett were the greatest sports center duo of maybe all time. They were fantastic, awesome. And now, Neil Everett is gone, and that saddens me so very much. So we'll see what ESPN does going forward, but a lot of layoffs in the industry today, in the sports journalism world side of things. Hopefully all those people land on their feet and find some good next homes after being out of ESPN. But to lead off this hour of Mic'd Up, this final hour of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW, John Sherman spoke a lot about the stadium yesterday. He said he was going to have media availability. We all knew it was going to be about the stadium. We all know that. And he was asked some great questions. I want to give a lot of a shout out to the media assembled at the Royals Hall of Fame yesterday morning, who really had some insightful comments. They might have been questions that have been asked a lot, but they did a good job kind of, I'll use the term grilling, though it wasn't really grilling. They just asked some good, insightful questions about the Royals stadium, the timeline, asking John Sherman these different things. So credit to them. But John Sherman had a lot of different things to say. And where I guess I want to kind of begin on all of this is a simple, why should these residents vote yes? Why does John Sherman think Jackson County or Clay County residents should vote yes for any sort of funding bills, any sort of funding ballot measures, any way that their tax dollars are going to this stadium? John Sherman was asked, with all the money that his ownership group has and he has and all this, why should there be public funding? So here's what John Sherman had to say on why residents should vote yes for this new stadium.
Yeah, I think these franchises, as I've said a lot, they're really important to the fabric, to the culture of a market like this. I think, we're the second smallest market with an NFL franchise and an MLB franchise. I think only Cincinnati is smaller, and that's close. I think it's an important part of the community. We would expect to deliver, public benefit in excess of that investment, if you look at it in the aggregate. And we have information out there. It's on our, what's the website of the stadium? KCBallparkDistrict.com. There's information there about the economic impact. We're creating a huge amount of jobs, billions of dollars of labor output in the project itself, and then ongoing. And we believe that the benefits to the community will far exceed the investment that the community makes in it. And if that makes sense. Also in Jackson County, I think we're one piece of feedback we have had in our conversation with Jackson County is to make sure that we're doing things for the citizens of Jackson County, right? That they have discounted pricing opportunities, they have other things. And we have that in place today, but I think it's misunderstood, actually.
So that's what John Sherman had to say about why residents should vote yes. And Vahe Gregorian and I, back in the noon hour, which you can go to our website, 580wibw.com, and listen back to that interview if you would like. They keep talking about benefits, public benefits, that, why, essentially what you're going to get out of this for your money. And we're both, and I'm lockstep with Vahe on this and lockstep with a lot of people on it. What I would like to see is just more transparency about that. And more importantly, it's complicated. It's there's a thing out there, and some activist groups in Kansas City have been a little more vocal about this and are definitely better resources than me on this. Essentially, there's something you can create called a community benefits agreement in some of these situations. It's another thing you can use to shorten to CBA instead of a collective bargaining agreement. There's also a community benefits agreement. Essentially, the Royals could, if they wanted to, and in partnership with Jackson County, could basically put together a written agreement of like, this is what we're going to do to benefit the community. This is what we're going to try and do. These are the standards we're holding ourselves to benefit this community, to benefit the money everyone's putting into this stadium. And you can hold us to it because it's written documentation. It's an agreement. It is a legally binding agreement we could do. I'm brutally honest. And again, it's a lot more nuanced than this. I'm not trying. I am not a policymaker. I am the furthest thing from a policymaker. I am the furthest thing from understanding the complex negotiation process and the political backings of all this. But I have to wonder, for the Royals, be more transparent about the funding and the benefits you're talking about and making sure that everyone knows what you're trying to do. So that's just a very big thing for me. And then with that, Sherman went at length on this answer. He went about 3 minutes on this specific answer on why there should be public funding. Not just on why residents should vote yes, but why is it even okay that he's asking for public funding? Here's what John Sherman had to say.
The way I look at it, particularly in a market like this, I think it's important that this is a public-private partnership. And I think that we're going to deliver meaningful community benefits in public benefits. And that'll be part of any agreement that we do, and we would expect to be held accountable to deliver those benefits. But the really important thing for me, we talked about why we bought the team, keep baseball in Kansas City for decades to come. I hope I own this team for a long time. I hope we own this team for a long time. But at the point where we decide to sell it to the next group of good people, I want this team to have a long-term lease in place, with the public in Kansas City. And so that's part of, in fact, I wished, in a lot of ways, I wish we had a long-term lease and a modern building when we bought the team. But that's really our job, is to make sure that when we get a new stadium, we're competitive with our peers. And I think making sure that the next owner whoever it is, their next set of owners. I'm actually hopeful that I think the way we put our group together, an idea was that the successor could come within our group. And that, when you think about the legacy of ownership in Kansas City, think about Ewing Kauffman a lot. What he did to make sure this team stayed here, what he did to get it here was one thing. A year after the A's left in 69, or they left in 67, he got the franchise in 69, a lot of marshaling of resources. But what he did when he gave it to the community foundation, it was not, I've said this before, it was not good for the on-field performance, was not good for the team, but it's why this franchise is still here in Kansas City. And then when David Glass called me in early 2019, that was in the spirit of Ewing Kauffman. So not only we buy the team and we're committed to doing this, in some ways we felt like we were selected for this mission to make sure that baseball is in Kansas City, that we stay a Major League Baseball team, town. And I believe that the public part of that is important. We want to be reasonable about it. We're not trying, this will be the largest investment from any sports team. In fact, if you look at the history of these two franchises, I think it was 100% financial, public financing when it was established. I think for the renovations, I think the Royals put in $25 million. I think the Chiefs put in $75 million and took the overage. We're going to invest in excess of $1 billion, and we're going to take the overage. And so that, and we're going to deliver massive public benefit for that. And we think that's worthy of getting a public partner. And I want to make sure the next owner has a long-term lease whenever we transfer ownership of this team at some point in the future, which I hope is a long time.
There is a lot to try and take away from that comment by John Sherman. What stands out to me, though, is the idea of he wants it to be a public-private partnership so that there is a long-term lease, so that when he and his group, mainly he, but when they sell the team, because let's be honest, like that's how ownership works. Outside of, family passed down teams, ownership changes as people get older and eventually the Royals will have a new owner. Like eventually John Sherman will not be the majority owner and kind of the face of the ownership of the Royals. Eventually that won't be the case. Just like it went from Ewing Kauffman to David Glass and David Glass to John Sherman. It'll go to somebody else. And to an extent, I understand the thought process of, well, if I sell the team and we're on a long-term lease with the city, they can't leave. They can't move the Royals out of Kansas City. On the one hand, that's correct. Like that's straight up correct. It is usually financially prohibitive for a team, for an ownership group to move a team before their lease is up. Now, I will add, if an owner wants to move a team, that team gets moved. Because either they're willing to pay the buyout and work and basically pay the city to leave, or they're just willing to wait till the lease is up and they bounce. And on that front, I'm looking right at you, John Fisher, wherever you are on your evil yacht slurping down bad guy juice. I wish I had better jokes than that. I don't got any today. Sorry. So I get the idea that John Sherman puts forth there, that he's trying to put it as the idea of like, we want this to have public investment because that means we're tied to the city. So that means that when the team actually transfers ownership, that the Royals are locked into Kansas City. There's always been this thought about, if John Sherman didn't get a stadium, he would just move the Royals. I've been clear about this, and I really believe this. John Sherman will never move the Royals. That man is so connected to Kansas City and so into the community and a lifelong guy of the city. I believe deep down he would never move the team. He would find a different way to build his stadium before he moved the team. He would delay building the stadium before he moved the team. Because I've heard some people say, oh, Sherman's just trying to build this up so he can immediately flip the team and move them or whatever. I don't believe that. I really don't. There can be a lot of things you can say about John Sherman, both good and bad. I would be stunned if he ever moved the Royals out of Kansas City. So I'll just say that to that point. So I think I really do believe him when he says part of this might be trying to lock the Royals into Kansas City so that a new owner couldn't move. But like I said, owners can always find a way to move their team. If an owner wants to move bad enough, they're going to move. You can't stop them. Public leases don't stop them. You know why? Because I've watched plenty of teams move because of that. Like, they either wait till the lease is up or they're willing to pay the money. One of those two things. Like, it doesn't stop them. If anything, you just delay the inevitable. So I'll be honest here. If John Sherman really doesn't want the team to move, then he vets whoever he's selling the team to and makes sure they won't move the team. Like, John Sherman, if you really don't want the Royals to ever move, that's what you do. But that's neither here nor there. And then he just goes back to the whole, community benefits and all this. And I made my point on that. I want to see what those benefits actually are. And more importantly, I want the Royals and John Sherman to be willing to bind themselves to an agreement. Bind themselves to, we're going to put X amount of dollars continuously back into the community. We're going to invest X amount of dollars back into businesses and infrastructure and employment and yada, 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 yada. I want to see them actually do that. Then I'll believe them on this whole benefits and community benefits, stuff as well. So going from kind of why this should be built to where, John Sherman discussed kind of what the club could do. And he spoke a little bit on, there's been a lot of work on revitalizing downtown Kansas City and investing in different spots and kind of building it up a little bit. And Sherman was asked, but how does the stadium fit into that? How does the stadium fit into trying to revitalize this downtown area? Here's what John Sherman has to say about trying to revitalizing downtown Kansas City with the stadium.
Yeah, I mean, that's was our focus when we started this, from the time we bought the team. And we announced that we're, going through our evaluation. We announced we're in a process, I think, in September of 21. We hired lots of advisors, public finance advisors, real estate advisors, architects. And I think that concept of rounding out the central business district to going vertical with corporate office, with residential, with hotels, with some retail and mixed use, green space, really make that a special part of downtown. And then, there's opportunity over in Paseo West. If you think about 71, and we thought about a lot of things, urban planning, neighborhoods, connections. So that was the focus. And
again, I these are the things where I believe John Sherman and what he's saying and what they're trying to do, but it always goes back to, can you be more upfront with what you're trying to do? Can you be more upfront with this stadium project? The Royals are going to move. We all just have to kind of accept that. And if you're on team, I don't want them to move. And if they move, I'm whatever. I know I'm not changing your mind, but I just need you to understand nothing you say or do is a way to stop this team from moving downtown. The ship has sailed on staying at the K. That one's out of port. The Royals, come 2028, more than likely, unless there's hiccups, will be playing in a downtown ballpark. They will no longer be playing at Kauffman Stadium. And I think there is truth to revitalizing the downtown area. As John Sherman said there, go vertical, build, office space and residential space. And the Royals can be a part of that. The Royals have talked about, with the stadium, building a ballpark district, like what the Cubs have done, like what I think the Orioles have kind of done it as well. And a few of these other teams in different areas have done this and built kind of, ballpark districts. It's the new thing in sports in general to put like an entertainment district around your stadium. Like football stadiums have done that a bunch lately. The Chiefs, we kind of, the Chiefs kind of want to do that with their area. And that's why they're tied to the Royals a little bit on all this, And that all circles back to investment in the community, that I just would like to see the Royals commit more strongly and be more vocal about what they're trying to do to benefit the community. This entire situation is very complex. It's very nuanced. I always talk about how it's way above my head with some of this stuff because I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm always far from that. And this type of stuff is not the simplest and definitely involves a lot of factors. But all I mainly took away from this, media availability for John Sherman was the team is moving. There's no more ifs about it. It's a when. It's a when this team moves and plays somewhere else and plays downtown, and the K is going away. And John Sherman talks about with the K, we're going to make sure we're moving somewhere safe. That's going to be easy to get to and access and get in, get out, and all of that. And that circles back to, the comments about parking are so overblown and the stupidest arguments I ever heard. And I want to whack people upside the head when they complain about it. But the Royals want to find a way to be more on par with other major league stadiums. And yes, Kauffman Stadium has its appeal and it is a beautiful looking ballpark. It is a gorgeous looking ballpark. But when you really think about it, there are a lot of drawbacks that could, potentially hamper your ability to generate revenue off that ballpark. I know John Sherman a little bit later spoke about it yesterday. He spoke about adding premium seating to the new ballpark. And Vahe, Gregorian, and I chatted about that a little bit as well. And Vahe made a great point of it as well. I've seen some comments moving like, oh, why do we care about premium seating? Why do we care about catering to those that are there just for clout and not there to actually enjoy the game? One, I'm kind of with you. Listen, I'm big on, I hate people that, I'm a baseball guy. I'm a baseball purist. It's my favorite sport. So, when I'm going to a baseball game, I'm going to watch a game. I'm going to enjoy a baseball game. I'm not going there to, eat, enjoy $10 beers and post on my Instagram and then leave. But the people that afford those luxury seats, the people that pay for that stuff, that's how you make your money. And so sometimes you got to cater to those people that you might not like as much, because that's how you make more money. That's how you get money to invest into the club, money to invest into free agents and other things like that. And so there are things about the K that could definitely be upgraded and be better and be different. And so I think a new stadium can definitely supply that and put itself in a position to where it'll really benefit the Royals and what they try and do. But we'll have to see what that is going forward. If a ballot measure comes up in April, I will be intrigued if it passes. And more importantly, I'll be intrigued if John Sherman does a smart move and spends money on the players, increases his payroll to basically, that'd be his way to prove you invest in me, I'm investing in you. I'm investing in making our team better. So please, can you invest in me to give us the facilities that I want? That's the way to do it. And we'll see if he does going forward, but also would help if his team actually gets some wins on the field. We're going to take a time out here on Mike Depp. Coming up next, time for this week's edition of On Second Thought. Time for this week's edition of On Second Thought, where normally Jake and I, but today just me, look back on things we said or thought or did earlier in the week and, ask for a mulligan, or basically just, kind of recant our statements just a little bit. Me, well, after that Royals, took split the series with the Rays. Life was good. Guardians coming to town. Guardians offense is not that good. Well, so I was like, well, they could take one. Maybe they can take two. Or if anything, they could be competitive for 3 games. Oh, boy. Was I wrong? Game 1 was nice. Brady Singer looked good. And then, the wheels fall off as things go. Game 2 with Austin Cox was a laugher. That one's the big one that I'm like, oh, boy, I really thought Austin Cox would look fine against the Guardians. And then I've kind of talked about it. For him, you can't walk people with his stuff. And you have to be in the strike zone. And all those walks in that game, the grand slam to Jose Ramirez, it was a bummer. It was an absolute terrible situation. And then the bullpen really just, blew it up. The Cleveland Guardians tied their season high in runs in 6 innings. Their season high had been 13 runs. It took them 6 innings to reach that. They then topped it with the extra run in the 7th when they went up 14-0. If there was any team that I thought, like, if the Royals this week in this homestand were going to lose a game 14-1, I was like, oh, cool. So the Dodgers had a good game. So the Dodgers did a Dodgers thing. That's what I would have thought. And it still could happen. It really could. But I just thought that the Guardians series would be a lot closer. And I was not correct about that. I was very wrong about what that was. So shame on me. And hopefully, I'm hoping some things are different, but just this Royals team, man, every time I think they might do something that is a little bit more competitive and that makes a little bit more sense and that they might be able to, play with some of these worst teams, they immediately, and I mean immediately, turn around and basically prove to me, nah, man, that's not how this works. And we're going to be bad, straight up immediately. So the Royals lost 2 of 3 to the Guardians. I really thought they were going to be swept. They came 6 outs away from being swept by Cleveland, which just would have been an absolute bummer. They made Shane Bieber look like vintage Shane Bieber. And while Shane Bieber's still pretty good, he is not what he used to be at all. And he carved up the Royals like normal. That was an absolute bummer. But that is this week's On Second Thought. We're going to go to a break here. I did want to point out some great news coming out of Pro Football Focus for the Kansas City Chiefs. Pro Football Focus put together their head coaching rankings. And listen, whatever you think about PFF, for me, it's when they say something nice about my team, they're great. And when they say something bad about my team, they're very wrong. That's usually my rule with PFF because they're kind of neither here nor there. But according to Pro Football Focus, the number 1 head coach in the NFL currently today is Andy Reid, which surprises none of you here in Chiefs Kingdom because Andy Reid is awesome and cool and great and fun. But that just came up from PFFF today. The Kansas City Chiefs Twitter announced that as well. But that was a fun little honor for Big Red and the Chiefs. The number 1 coach in the entire NFL is Andy Reid. And I would completely agree with that, with how great he's been and the fact that he's now a 2-time Super Bowl champion. Well, look at time out. Coming up next, the Royals and Dodgers. Take a look at the series and kind of discuss what to see and the success potentially for Alec Marsh tonight against Los Angeles Dodgers. Truly looking forward to the weekend here on Mic'd Up. I gotta say, before I go into anything else, when Jake and I started this specific show a little over a year ago now, you know, to give some inside baseball here about it, every like special bump or music we play, like every honestly music we play, it's not commercials. We like record that ourselves and find ways to put it together and stuff like that. We just can kind of make it ourselves, unsurprisingly. That probably comes as a shot to literally none of you. That's really basically how this works. But we don't always do that together. Like a lot of these, like a bunch of the like specialty segment bumps, you know, I made myself and, you know, kind of showed Jake a final cut and was like, hey, you cool with this? And he's like, all right, cool, awesome. And then I put it into our system. But Jake, for what have now become our Tuesday and Friday penultimate bumps, did those without telling me. I just showed up one day and Jake was like, hey, I put 2 new things in the system. We should play them. And I was like, well, obviously I have very little say here. You are my boss. But 2, I was like, all right, cool. Like I play a bunch of random stuff on here. Like this is a partnership. So yeah, cool, whatever. And so I learned that they were for specific days. I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, I got something to play on Tuesday. I something to play on Friday. I'm like, okay. I pretty quickly sussed out what Friday probably was for what music he wanted, because there's one very, very, as we have now over this year learned, very infamous song associated with the last day of the work week. That song has grown on me so much in 1 year. When we first started doing this, and Jake was like, we're going to start playing Friday every Friday. And I was like, man, why are we doing this? Why are we playing this? I want to like smack my head against a wall. I still will not, I will not say it's a good song. It's a bad song, but it is catchy and now infects me with happiness every time it plays on Fridays. Like I look forward to Friday shows partly because I know we're going to end the day playing the Friday bump, which is just, it's a silly thing. This is just for me. This is me kind of going on a tangent for a minute. But I hope for all of you as much as me that do listen to it, not on the YouTube live stream. I do apologize because of certain music rights. We get a little, you know, touchy about what music we play over the YouTube because they'll DMCA strike us, or basically copyright music strike us, potentially very fast. We can be a little bit more loose with the rules over the AM radio waves. But not as much with the YouTube. They're a bit stricter. More importantly, it's their bots that make the decision. And sometimes those bots are very mean. Overall, it's a fun end of the work week. We're going into the 4th of July weekend. I know some of you might be off on Monday. If you are, take it off. Have a good day. If not, we'll all be together off on Tuesday for Independence Day, which will be a lot of fun. And as always, if you're doing any fireworks this week, I'll add this little week addendum. If you're doing anything this weekend, 1, I'm a believer on you do it on just the 4th and the 4th alone. So first off, you could just wait. Like you don't need to do that. Secondly, if you are, just be safe. You're exploding things. You're using things that's literal explosives a lot of the time. Like not like high grade stuff here, but they're things that go boom, usually with some black powder. Just be safe. Don't be stupid. There's a lot of stupid things you could do this weekend and going on the 4th of July. Just everyone, please be safe. I'm going to just add that blanket thing here. I'll probably end up seeing that on Monday too, but I'll add that here right now as well. But to wrap up this Friday edition of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW, the Royals start a series with the Los Angeles Dodgers tonight. It is a 3-game set in Kansas City, second consecutive year that the Dodgers are coming to play the Royals in Kansas City. Last year, the Royals took 1 of 3 against the Dodgers. It was a win that was very unlikely. And that win was spearheaded by a great start by Brady Singer. Well, funny enough, that's the guy that goes on Sunday. But the Royals play the Dodgers tonight, 7:10 first pitch. Tomorrow will be a 6:15 first pitch, and tomorrow's game can actually be seen on Fox. So if you're always thinking how it's hard to see the Royals, they're on Fox tomorrow. They're on good old the basic cable Fox, so everyone can watch it. And then Sunday is a 1:10 start. The Royals will send Alec Marsh to the mound tonight. Daniel Lynch will go to the mound tomorrow, and Brady Singer will go to the mound on Sunday. For the Dodgers, they will send tonight, and I want to make sure I get this young man's name correctly. They will send Bobby Miller to the mound tonight for them. Bobby Miller is one of the many young Dodgers pitchers. The Dodgers this year, offensively, classic Dodgers. They score over 5 runs a game. They're good. They're great. They hit really well. Dodgers pitching is 23rd in MLB this season in ERA, so they've struggled a lot. Bobby Miller is one of their young new pitchers this year. He is 3-1 on the season with a 4.13 ERA. He started out really good. Like, first 3 starts, 6 innings, 6 innings, 6 innings, 1 run, no run, no run. He was awesome. Bobby Miller has gotten shelled his last 2 starts. Over Bobby Miller's last 9 2/3 innings pitched, he's given up 13 runs. Against the Giants, he went 5 2/3 innings, gave up 7 runs on 7 hits. Against the Houston Astros, he went 4 innings, gave up 6 runs on 10 hits. He's had walk issues all season long. So I'm interested to see what Miller does, especially he's had mainly issues with his walks as of late. He has 13 walks and 32 2/3 innings pitched, but 9 of those 13 have come in his last 3 starts as he's lost the strike zone a little bit. Does strike out nearly a batter an inning, so he does have some good strikeout stuff as well. So it's a young pitcher the Royals have never faced before, so we'll see what they do against young Bobby Miller. On Saturday, it'll be Daniel Lynch and Julio Urias. Julio Urias has been on the injured list. He will make his return from the injured list against the Royals. Very, very talented lefty for the Los Angeles Dodgers. And then on Sunday, it'll be Brady Singer versus Tony Gonsolin. Tony Gonsolin has not even good of a year as he did last year, but still pitching fairly well this season. He will look good as well. Like I said, Marsh, Lynch, and Singer will be the ones for the Royals. So it is Alec Marsh tonight. The Royals, and I'm going to double check this as I say it. The Royals have not made an official announcement about Alec Marsh joining the team today. So they basically have not just announced their roster move. They'll probably announce that within the next hour or so, with first pitch being 7:10. I don't know if they'll announce it before we are off the air here on Mic'd Up, so you might have to tune into 580 Sports Talk to get the lineup and announcement of the roster move for Alec Marsh. Now that I've thought about it, I believe they'll probably just send James MacArthur back down to AAA Omaha because his 1 inning was so bad. It kind of thins out your bullpen by 1 arm, but it's an arm you really don't want to use. And there's no member of the rotation you would want to send down or probably hit the injured list, because I doubt Lyles is sick enough you want to put him on the injured list. So that being said, Alec Marsh will get called up. Like I said earlier, he's on the 40-man roster, so there's no 40-man roster move that has to be made. He is on the 40-man. You just got to get clear up some room on the 26-man roster to get Alec Marsh up on the club. So with his start tonight, that is, I think, the biggest focus for tonight. For the rest of the weekend, you got all young starters going. How do they pitch against a really good offense? The Dodgers are a really good offense. How do these young pitchers do? Because all 3 of these guys who are going to pitch the next 3 days are all dudes who could be a part of the future. Alec Marsh could be a member of your rotation. Brady Singer, we would like to still remember the rotation, but maybe he's a bullpen guy. Either way, you'd like him to be a member of this team long term. And then Daniel Lynch has looked really good for the most part of his last few starts, outside, of course, that one little bugaboo against Cincinnati Reds. For Alec Marsh, though, specifically tonight, my biggest thing when I'm watching him tonight is just going to be, how does he handle a big league lineup? Something he hasn't had to do before. He's only been in AAA for 3 starts since coming up from AA, so he's got limited experience against high-level competition. He has looked well against that high-level competition with an ERA of 2.40 in 3 starts. But overall, I want to see what he does against this upper echelon tier of talent that the Dodgers do have collected. Big thing for Marsh is walks. If he can command his pitches, particularly his fastball, and have some control, not be wild, not walk the universe, then I think he can have some success tonight. What that success looks like, I don't know. For me, the success would be 3 to 4 runs in 5 innings of work. Mainly, can Marsh keep the Royals in the ballgame? That is what I want to see from Alec Marsh tonight. But also, he has so light expectations tonight. And what I mean by that is if Alec Marsh doesn't pitch well, no one should be upset at him. Because he isn't even supposed to be up here right now, essentially. The plan was probably for Alec Marsh to come up in August, like August 1st. He's probably going to get at least another month down at AAA. And he probably still will. This is a spot start. He probably will go right back to Omaha tomorrow. Which also, I'll just add, if Alec Marsh sits here and goes like 6 innings, 1 run against the Dodgers, and you see the Royals announce they moved him back down tomorrow, please don't go up in arms about this. Yes, it was good. This is a spot start. He will go back down after today. Whatever happens today, he needs more seasoning in Omaha for sure. Even if today starts a good one. Because then he can build up that success in Omaha and be more ready to join the rotation in full coming up in August and later on this year. But I just want to see how he pitches tonight, how well he does, and overall what he can kind of do to navigate this Dodgers lineup and how well they perform. For Daniel Lynch and Brady Singer, I have kind of different expectations for both of them coming up this weekend as well. Singer, just can he build off of that good start against wasn't it? I believe Cleveland. Oh my goodness, my brain is already just in a very dangerous place. Yes, he was the first one against Cleveland in the 2-1 loss. I apologize, everyone. Like I said earlier, time is a construct and it flies by too much for my brain. Singer had 6 shutout innings in that start. Can he build off of that? Can he look that good? Can he do that against a higher level of competition how he can perform? And for Daniel Lynch, can he keep up this run of good starts? His last bad start was against Cincinnati when, he had those real big struggles against the Reds and had that issue there. But, he looked good against Detroit. That basically one hitter in 7 innings that he threw. He looked good against Tampa Bay. He looked really good against Tampa Bay. Even the game that they lost 3-1, he allowed 1 run over 6 innings to the Rays. That's really important and really good and something he can build off of going forward. So for all these young guys, I just want to see how do they do against higher level pitching, top tier pitching, top tier hitting, apologies, with the Dodgers, with guys like JD Martinez, with guys like Mookie Betts. Max Muncy's going to be back in the lineup. Freddie Freeman is Freddie Freeman, who's just so good. James Outman's had a nice young season for the Dodgers as well. They just have a lot of good young players. Will Smith, their catcher. I really want to see just how does this Royals pitching staff handle a team with so much good hitting when their pitching is still trying to learn what to do. So that's the big thing. The Royals might get swept this weekend. They probably will get swept this weekend. It's going to be a bummer. It's going to stink, but there's enough good young players going that it's worth watching just to see what do the young players do. You don't have to. I will. I'll recap it on Monday, depending on what ends up happening. But we march over close to the All-Star break, and I'm just excited to see what these Royals players do going forward. We'll take our final time out here on Mic'd Up. Coming up next, we'll wrap things up with the mic drop. Time for the mic drop here on Mic'd Up on 580 WIBW. For me, it is very, very simple. I am so excited to watch Alec Marsh pitch tonight. If the Royals are getting killed at some point, I'll probably turn it off after Alec Marsh is done pitching, even if he's the one getting shelled. But I was his supporter all last season. He was a guy I said should be on that next wave of dudes to come up, is part of that pitching depth. Him, Anthony Venzaino, Drew Parrish, even all these different young dudes. I'm excited to see what they can do because they are the testament to the new pitching development. They are the ones that, if this new development team can really be successful, they got to be able to do something with these guys. And that is why I'm so interested in what this is going to be, and interested in what Marsh can do, and when the opportunities come, what Venzaino can do, what Drew Parrish ends up doing if he ever gets to come up, and all these different guys. That is what matters to me. Even Austin Cox's success a little bit. That's why I'm so intrigued by these things, because the Royals need to identify their nucleus. They need to identify what they have, because once they do that, then they can know what they need to build with going forward. Then John Sherman can put his money where his mouth is and spend on this team like he says he's willing to do, and really try and go forward. So that's why I'm so excited for these starts, and hopefully they go well, and hopefully overall it should be a great time. That'll do it for Mike Dubs today. Thank you all so much for joining me on this relatively solo edition of the show. A big thank you to Kyle, as always, for helping me out running the board. It will be Kyle and I again coming up on Monday. We'll get you ready for the 4th of July. But coming up next, 580 Sports Star with Brennan and Dan. All of you have a great rest of your day.